Yeah, I feel like the traditional market still is offering the best as far as quality and price points.
Oh yeah, I agree.
All right, let me get this. All right, and we are here. Um, let's see. What do I normally say for my intro? Oh shit. Oh, what the fuck is happening, fam? It is your boy, the Sultan of Sativa, the Ayatollah of Indica, the Bobby Fischer BHO, also known as Ned Sparks, also known as Willie the Cool Penguin, also known as President United Bakes of America, Joe Biden. And I'm here today for a brand spanking new episode of Let's Talk About It. And yet again, my man Billy Bronner comes through with a great connection, and so I first must say thank you to Billy B. He's listening, but he's muted. Of Bronner Communications, best communications company this side of the Mississippi. He brought a friend of his, Niambe McIntosh, which, for those who do not know, that is the daughter of reggae legend Peter Tosh. For those who do not know who Peter Tosh is, I feel deeply, deeply sorry for you because he has pretty much been the ambassador and provided the theme song for all things cannabis, and that every human in this community should know. Legalize it. And I, for one, since I heard that record, have always advertised it. And I gotta tell you, I'll never forget being like 14 and getting a copy of that record on vinyl from my uncle, and like lighting up some incense and smoking a bowl, listening to that, like just when that just kicks in, like. And then I remember my dad knocking on the door, yelling at me for smoking weed in the room. There you go. There you probably one of the most iconic album covers of all time too.
I would definitely agree.
I've always wanted to like recreate that album cover with me in the field.
I also want to recreate the album cover.
Where do you know where that is?
Yes, it's in Westmoreland, Jamaica. They say you get the best in the West, so it's on the West Coast, so similar to New
Gotcha.
Orleans. Yeah.
Have you enjoyed any of the cannabis from like the medical market in Jamaica?
I have not. Um, it's just in such abundance. Um, when I go down and you could literally get maybe for $20, you get a grocery bag full of weed. And so it just, for me, it doesn't make sense to go into any establishment to purchase
Absolutely not.
to purchase cannabis at this point. I mean, I support it for people that want something that they can recognize and they're trying to fine tune for a specific strain and whatever. To each his own. But I think like you, I definitely support the legacy market, and the original ganja farmers. So that's
You're absolutely right, because like pretty much as soon as you get off the airplane, I feel like you're getting bombarded by like 10 different people trying to give you trash bags full of weed.
exactly.
I'll tell you,
Exactly.
I'll tell you what, I really enjoyed that Jamaican finger hash. I mean, that was
Mm.
no joke adding that to the J.
Nice, nice.
Um, the so how old were you when your dad passed away?
He passed away in 1987. I was only 5 years old.
Whew, I wasn't even born yet.
Oh wow.
I was born in '88.
Okay.
Um, that's that's a sad day in music history for sure.
Definitely 9/11, yeah, to be exact. So it has a whole new meaning for me.
Well, and now correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, your dad was very much somebody that cared about people and did a lot for the community down in Jamaica and really went out of his way to try to help people.
No, definitely. His public persona and media persona was a very serious, advocate for his own personal rights and just human rights overall. He spoke out when he felt like people were trying to wrong him within the musical industry, as well as spoke out against apartheid. He has a song called Apartheid, and when at the time when it was released, most of his band members and even a lot of people just didn't even know what apartheid was. He was known for making up words like shit stem and crime minister, and so many people thought that apartheid was just another word that he was making up, but it was this, whole racist regime that existed within South Africa. And so that song really became the anthem for a lot of freedom fighters across the country.
I mean, I just don't think people recognize how much like roots reggae is littered with songs of freedom,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, obviously, I think everybody knows Bob Marley, right? But I mean, to me, it's some of the other players in the game that really made a difference.
Yeah, my father was one of the founding members of the Wailers. It wasn't Bob Marley and the Wailers. It was just the Wailers when they all came together, and it was Peter Tosh, my dad, Bob Marley, Bunny Wailer, and then the other band members that actually played some of the musical instruments. My father taught Bob how to play the guitar. Many people don't know that,
I had no clue.
and he was extremely musically talented. He probably knew how to play over 20 instruments. Yes, ridiculous. From the harp to the drums to the guitar, and many instruments in
Yeah.
between. Yeah, he was played. Rode a unicycle, black belt. Very, very eclectic individual and just passionate overall.
What? How come they split?
Well, when Chris Blackwell came in, who kind of started Island Records, he pushed Bob to the front. He's the one who kind of changed the name to make it Bob and the Wailers, and they just decided that that wasn't the path that Bob and Bunny didn't want for themselves. They still remained friends. They performed on each other's albums a little bit, some from time to time, but my father, said he never was meant to be a background vocalist. So
I'd agree with that.
he launched his own career, his solo career with the album Legalize It, platinum selling album.
I would say, my when he came out with Wanted, Dread, and Alive, compared to everything else that was going on in reggae at the time, like, dude, Peter Tosh single-handedly changed reggae with that record. I mean, I never heard anything like it.
Yeah, he maintained a very unique sound within reggae. His music is very timeless as well. Like all, everything is an anthem for a movement. People ask my favorite song, but I'm just like, it really depends on the season. Sometimes
Facts.
so it depends on what type of mood I'm in.
That's awesome. What who I just feel like that's such a uh cool part of history that's within your family. Let's I don't want to dwell too much on on the Whalers and your dad, and I'm sure you've answered all those questions a bazillion times. Um, I want to know more about you and some of the things that you have going on,
Yes.
and how it is that what it is that you got going on, and why we're here.
Yeah. Well, I am my father's youngest child, and um, after teaching in Boston public schools for about 10 years, I became the head of the Peter Tosh brand and legacy. So I pretty much carry on his legacy. I'm also the founder of the Peter Tosh Foundation, which we launched in 2016. And one of the reasons why I'm here today is really to share part of one of our initiatives and the story behind it, which is justice for Jawara. And so Peter's my dad's youngest son, Jawara. And this takes a very, just to kind of prep listeners as we transition from one, celebratory story to a different story that's definitely has a more sad undertone to it, but some victories, live within the story. My father's youngest son, Jawara, also musically known as Tosh One, a father of four, an activist, a musician, and a follower of Rastafari faith. In 2013, he was arrested in New Jersey for cannabis possession. We actually live in Boston, but it was Father's Day weekend, and he was held without a hearing for about 3 months until September. And, it was already mind-boggling to kind of hear that. During that time, he was incarcerated with a 17-year-old who couldn't make $150 bail over an ounce of weed. And so we knew that we were dealing with like this prison economy. When we got to Bergen County or Hackensack, like you saw bail's bondsmen like on every corner. This was a city that kind of thrived off of its prison population, unfortunately. And I kind of thought that this case would just be something that will pass, all because we've never really been had encounters with the criminal justice system. I was just like, okay, this is going to be something that passes, it will move on. But my mom and I, when we sat in the hearing, that's when we first heard the prosecution offer a 20-year plea.
You said this was 2013?
This was 2013.
And he had an ounce of weed on him?
No, I said that he was incarcerated with someone.
Oh, gotcha.
Who couldn't make $150, who was just in jail because he couldn't make $150 for over an ounce of weed. My brother had allegedly like 65 pounds on him. And so, some people see that number and like, well, there you have it. But here we're in a country and in a state that had legalized for medicinally, and we had so many other people that because they're white and with money, they can sell weed, for legally, and that's usually the differentiator between money ends up being the differentiator between, access and, unfortunately, a great divider within our criminal justice system. And so he was offered a 20-year plea. And also the judge set the bail at $200,000. Now, mind you, like I said, this is a man that has never been incarcerated before, never had any run-ins really with the law. And it was just mind-boggling for us. And that's when I knew that this was bigger than what I thought it was going to be. Fortunately, with some support, he was able to kind of make bail in 2013 in December. And so he spent the next 3 years going back and forth to New Jersey, having pretrial conversations with the prosecution and his attorneys, being told, 20 years, that's, we offered you that before. Well, how about 15? That you better take 15, because if this goes to trial, you're going to get hit hard. You're going to get the full sentence. And then he would leave and come back and they'll say, well, what about 10? And kind of the same threat kind of laid on top of the offer, and then in 2016, it got down to 5 years. And he was told that, if this, you'll probably only serve, a year and a half or a year, 6 months, because you've already done 6 months already. This will probably be something that you can just do and get behind you. And that pretty much is what he expected to happen. So he he took the plea. Although we wanted to fight for what we believed in, as you know, we know this is a medical plant. As followers of Rastafari, we recognize the plant as sacred, you know, connecting us with our higher selves. And but at the same time, we were in New Jersey where that's not the case. They're looking to criminalize any and everyone associated with the plant. And because he's a father, it's not something that we really wanted to risk. And so he decided to take the plea. So in 2017, in January, he turned himself in. And after about a month and a half after being incarcerated, he was attacked by another inmate, suffering a traumatic brain injury. My mom got a call from a surgeon. This is how we found out. And she calls me crying frantically. And she's just like, there's a doctor on the phone. They're talking about Jawara. And the doctor says to me, we need to perform a life-saving medical procedure on your brother. He has been attacked by another inmate. And so we authorize the surgery and immediately, you know, go to the airport and fly into New Jersey to go to the hospital, Hackensack Medical Center. When we get there, we're told that we're not even allowed to see my brother. We're said, you know, you have to call the jail. You know, you're not authorized to visit him. And so we call the jail and we pretty much, you know, advocate. And I really know that because of my father's name, is why they let us actually visit him. But once we got into the surgical ICU, we saw my brother. He had tubes down his throat, a neck brace on, his face was bruised up. He was fighting for his life, and he had a handcuff on his ankle while being surrounded by correctional officers. And we had actually asked the hospital after some time to say, you know, is there a way that we can get this handcuff removed? I'm sure it's no help to his survival. And they told us that the hospital has hierarchy. No, the prison actually has hierarchy over the hospital, and that's a decision that the prison would have to make. And you
No
know,
dignity.
it was a terrible experience. And for 2 months, he stayed in the ICU. Fortunately, we had a lot of people helping us, and we were able to get him released from the jail. But during that time, they were constantly bullying us, like we were criminals, you know, trying to visit my brother. They would, you know, threaten us and say, well, today you only can visit him for 45 minutes. I mean, he was fighting for his life at this time. Eventually he got stable enough, but was unable to do anything for himself. He couldn't walk, he couldn't talk, he could barely maintain eye contact. Doctors had used the word vegetative state. But me knowing my brother and being in there with him pretty much 24/7, I was like, this dude's not a vegetable. You know, this is someone who is fighting for his vitality. And he would show us signs. You know, he would, you know, I was sneaking in fish oil at the time. And that's when I saw his feet really start to move. And then he started to kind of eventually just be able to do little things like sustain eye contact. We took him home. He ended up staying in the hospital, not home, but we took him to Boston. And he was in the hospital in Boston for almost 2 years, actually. And we decided after that to take him home. Once I got him home, I was able to give him, you know, the plant medicine. And and that was the first time that he actually said my name. You know, he began to kind of make just small steps of progress to show that he was there. And one funny story is that, you know, muscle memory is amazing because he couldn't really do anything for himself, but I could put a vape to his mouth and he would inhale, hold it in his mouth, and blow it out his nose.
Yeah.
And so it just showed that, you know, he was there, you know, with us, and definitely, you know, happy to be partaking in the sacrament. But unfortunately, in July of 2020, he succumbed to his injuries and passed away. And so we launched the Justice for Jawara initiative, really to continue to share his story and have so many people understand what cannabis prohibition has done to American citizens, what it's done to families, how it can truly affect a whole community. You know, I don't have a brother, my mom doesn't have a son, and my nieces and nephew don't have a father. And it's time that we recognize that it's not only time for national legalization, but global legalization, really, and also criminal justice reform. You know, there has to be, we can no longer continue to treat human beings the way we do and allow them to be victimized in certain environments. We hear words like prisoner and criminal to dehumanize these people, when in fact they are fathers. You know, there are daughters, their families, and they often just you know, need support in some shape or form. So I just wanted to come and share that story, and you know, amongst others, you know, I'm carrying on my father's legacy as well in other ways.
No, well, one, I really appreciate you taking the time to come and chop it up with me and share these stories, because I think it's extremely important as a father who is an avid cannabis user and has been pretty much since I was 13. It's like, and it's hilarious because the mother of my children, she is not a cannabis user and is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So I'm not only fighting the battle out in the world, I fight the battle at home every day. Yeah, because I understand, right? I've struggled through a lot of my own personal issues, and the plant's the only thing that's helped me. You know, and I've tried I've tried pharmaceuticals. I've gotten hooked on pharmaceuticals. Like, you know, I spent some time clean, but like once I decided to get back to it, you know, I couldn't. It was just frustrating because I knew that if I was able to have access to some of the concentrates or different products that we have today, I may never have, you know, been over in West Baltimore shooting dope.
Exactly.
You know, like, because, well, smoking a bunch of hash will help with any pain that I have, mental, physical, or spiritual.
No, it's definitely true. I have a cannabis doctor myself, and she considers cannabis to be the exit drug. You know, people have demonized it and called it the gateway drug due to intentional propaganda and misinformation from all the way from Harry and Anslinger days, you know. But so many people don't know that all of these little seeds of misinformation really have painted their understanding of a plant that just heals, you know. And so she sits, Dr. Uma has these patient support groups that I've sat in, and you've had people from age 21 all the way up to like age 95. And they will share their story and the ailments, the long list of ailments that they are battling and dealing with. And for so many, cannabis is the only plant and medicine that has been able to help them, from some of the basics, quote unquote, like anxiety, but to conditions that, you know, I've never even heard of. You know, people are like, I got shooting pain from my brain to my eyeballs, and you're just like, what? And then
Weird
like
skin conditions. I mean,
exactly.
There's I know for me, it's like, I'm like, I have back pain and, you know, anxiety and depression, whatever. But there are other people that I'm like, holy crap, like, you know, and then you see stories like, you know, the little kids who have 100 seizures and then they get some cannabis oil and don't have seizures anymore.
Exactly.
You know, I remember being like a teenager, and a really good friend of mine, he was like the first guy that I knew that was calling cannabis medicine when we were like 16. He's like pulling up YouTube videos about endocannabinoid receptor systems back when nobody's talking about that kind of stuff except like crackpot scientists
Right.
who are on YouTube.
Exactly. It's funny that you mentioned that. It was only recently, maybe in the past 5 years, that I saw an interview of my dad, and I had heard him say endocannabinoid, and I'm just like, what? I was like, you were definitely a man of his time. Even in the song Bush Doctor, he goes through and he's talking about, you know, glaucoma. It's good for glaucoma. It's good for the only cure for asthma. Legalize it. He names a list of
a whole list of ailments.
And so he was, you know, definitely a man above it, you know, beyond his time. He had the when he died in '87. The book The Emperor Wears No Clothes by Jack Herer was found in his house, which I recently found out, and that was really cool. And I met Dan Herer, which is Jack Herer's son, which was super awesome. But he definitely was, he wasn't a superficial level of knowledge that he had. He was deeply embedded in understanding the plant holistically.
I mean, I think when you listen to Legalize It, you hear that in his soul coming out.
Yes.
I mean,
exactly.
Not many weed songs stand the test of time like that one.
Mm-hmm. I would definitely agree. You know, he even sings about it being good for the economy, you know, can build up a failing economy in the song Bush Doctor. You know, he highlights how lawyers and doctors and judges can use it, but he, you know, definitely knew the hypocrisy behind how illegalization is enforced, you know.
Yeah. Well, when we think about it, right, your brother being a perfect example, like this isn't something that affects just, you know, it affects everybody, right? Like the nonviolent cannabis arrests. I mean, we'll say drug arrests as a whole, but you know, specifically cannabis, it's absurd. And they want your family to be torn apart, your whole life to be destroyed, so that they can keep you as a source of revenue coming in for the state.
Oh, definitely. I mean, and you mentioned how it affects people, but cannabis has been used to kind of demonize and justify the killing of Black lives for many years. Trayvon Martin, you know, when he was killed by George Zimmerman in 2012, the police leaked a video about how, there was, you know, traces of cannabis in his system. Fidel Castile, who was a 37-year-old cafeteria worker in Minnesota, who the cops walked up on and murdered him in front of his 5-year-old daughter. That would be the police said he feared for his life because he smelled cannabis. Breonna Taylor, you know, another name that has been thrown up, you know, in where that she was killed by the police. It's the immediate go-to to say, but you know, she had cannabis, or and then people are like, okay, which is insane that's the justification. And so police brutality, you know, you talk about cannabis being connected to so much and of the issues that are going on today. It's also being used, you know, for immigrants, you know, that are coming to this country. They're kicking people out of the country, you know, because of cannabis possession. So there's a long history of
can't have a gun.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. You know, they continue to just violate rights through.
I mean, I, for one, still, when I get pulled over, it's an 8 out of 10 chance that I'm getting pulled out of the car, you know, because they're going to say it smells like weed. And it does smell like weed. But that doesn't mean I'm doing any criminal activities. And it's fucked up, because you'll talk to people, you'll talk to these cops like while this is happening. And I'm like, come on, dude, I'm a medical patient. Let me show you my paperwork. right? Like I can pull it up right now. Just give me my phone. They're like, I was like, if I had 1,000 Xanax pills, would it be a problem? They're like, nope,
Yeah,
wouldn't
not
care.
a problem. Not a problem. Even a bunch of alcohol, which can kill people, which kills people all the time. And that's
In an array of different ways too, not from just physically drinking yourself to death, but drunk driving,
yes,
fucking around with guns while you're drunk, which is totally acceptable.
exactly.
If you're a raging alcoholic, you can still buy guns.
Makes absolutely the hypocrisy is so deep.
It's because they don't want people thinking and owning guns.
Exactly. No, it's very true. We live in this hypocritical country, and I am very grateful for every benefit that I get from living here. But there's a consciousness that you have to have, and that freedom of speech and that freedom and those rights that we have. That's what we need to stand on and continue to stand on to advocate for what's right. How do you make a plant illegal? Like, how does that even make sense?
Well, and my thought process for that has always been, it doesn't make sense, and I'm willing to take the risks associated with it because this is what I believe in. And guess what? I'm gonna stand up and I'm gonna shout that shit because that's the only way that I know that we can unify. And it's been great to see so many people getting involved in cannabis with legalization and finding communities and little niches and places where they can feel good about themselves. And I see a lot of people who, while they're over here enjoying their vape carts and whatever else, they're believing, like they're feeding into that belief of like the cannabis justification in the death of somebody when it's just clearly being used as propaganda to villainize and demonize.
Yes, no, I totally agree. I think it's so important for us to have these mediums, like your podcast and the various spaces where people can come together and get information. I think one of the most challenging thing is to find ways that we don't speak to the choir, because we end up connecting with like-minded individuals, but
Right.
it's the other audience that has been completely brainwashed by this century of propaganda, where I've heard, even just a couple of years ago, I heard a news broadcaster talk about how cannabis can make you violent, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like in 2019 people are still holding on to this misinformation, which is,
I was literally about to say, I've never smoked weed and felt violent.
ever.
And then you said there's somebody on the news that was saying that cannabis makes people violent. But that's like the same type of propaganda they used to use back in the 1800s. And they would say that cannabis makes black people rape white women.
Oh no, of course. And so it's continued on up until this day. They try to use it and justify so many murders that happen, and it's ridiculous. But yet still some people are kind of disconnected from the truth, and so when they hear those justifications, it instantly, they're just like, oh, okay, then it's okay for a human to lose their life, unfortunately. And so we have to, that's why I share my brother's story the way that I do, to really paint the picture of just like, he's a fun, loving spirit. He's always been this just big kid musician, larger than life. Everyone loves him, I used to say, men and women alike, because he's that like, that just like straightforward, straight shooter, but very, very just fun loving, and that's something that I think people can relate to, where they have to understand that when you hear these words and read headlines about criminals or someone being murdered, these are human beings, that are being ripped out of families. These are people. And unfortunately, the history of this country has allowed people to kind of separate their existence from Black and brown people. They're just like, oh, that's them, and we have to find ways to have conversations where we bridge that gap and humanize our existence.
It really feels sometimes like the majority, or a significant portion of the American population almost has like some form of Stockholm syndrome, the way that they sympathize with these police and their government, right? These people are unjust, and they are not representing our interests. When 70% of the nation has some form of legalization and decriminalization, like, at what point do we just say, okay, let's get rid of these laws? The government's getting paid mad taxes and able to pay its bills with weed money, but people like your brother, get locked up for trying to do the same.
Exactly.
And it's a hypocritical system. And people still believe that the standard voice of democracy, going to vote, that's the shit that's actually making the changes. And like, when, I know here in Maryland, I've gone to lobby day a few different times. Courthouse is probably 25 minutes in Annapolis from Baltimore. And it's like, it's hard because when you actually go and sit in there and listen to what these, like, your delegates are like talking about, like, you're trying to get legalization or like full recreational legalization, and these people don't even understand the concept of how cannabis is medicinal.
Exactly.
And if you even were to try to talk to them about terpenes and different percentages of different cannabinoids, like, they look at you like you're insane. And then they also see the people that are outside protest, or like, cheering it on, kind of perpetuate some of the negative stereotypes around cannabis. And not to say that I can't be the same way, but I'm very in your face about it. That's just always how I've been. Like, wherever we're at, I'm lighting up, and I don't care who's around. We're talking about a plant.
Exactly.
We're talking about a plant, and we're talking about medicine. I feel zero shame. Right?
As you should.
My kids are 3 and 2 and a baby. They understand it's daddy's medicine. And they may not fully grasp that as a concept, but I'm letting them know now so that they can grow up without that type of brainwashing.
Exactly. No, it's important to have those conversations now. My culture is Rastafari. Like, people ask me sometimes, who smokes weed in your family? The real question is, who doesn't? So I could probably, count them all on one hand. And my family's big. So, it's really important that we change the stigma and talk about these things with our children, because that's how we create a new generation that has a better understanding, because the last thing we want is the mainstream media and messages to kind of teach our children with fear tactics, especially in states where that's all they're using is just like fear to kind of write regulations, and it's the same propaganda from the 1930s and, when cannabis, the Mass Tax Act came out, and so we have to do the work, and it starts in your own home. So I definitely commend you. And so many people don't really know how to do that in their own space because of the stigma attached. They feel like they have to hide it. My daughter can be like, oh, I smell cannabis, she'll just point it out. Like, she has a stuffed cannabis leaf that we call Leafy, that I got from some cannabis, maybe the High Times or something like that.
Right.
But I let her know the work that I do, and she knows who her grandfather is. She knows the music. She knows the message. She knows her culture. So just passing that on and sharing that with as many people as we can is really how we change the narrative and change the stigma.
Oh, and I totally just thought about it off the random. The Peter Tosh cover of Johnny Be Good. I don't, if anybody out here is listening and has never heard that, I mean, it's hard to say a song, you know, a cover is better than the original. But if you're a reggae fan or a music fan, everybody knows Johnny Be Good. You have to hear this version of it. It's
Yes,
phenomenal.
it's funny. He wasn't used to doing covers, and so he was against it at first. But then they recorded it, and he just was like, "This is good." It was like
He made it his own.
yeah,
and to be fair, he shredded that solo,
yeah.
ripped it. You know, you got like the bongos in there. I mean, it's just it's the slight changes to the lyrics. You know, it's just some. You know, you can tell that guy was on his shit. I love it.
Definitely, definitely.
What so what? Let's get in a little bit about some of your foundation and what you know, how people can get involved, how people can, you know, can learn a little bit more about the Justice for Jawara. Okay, sorry. You know, and just everything else that you're working on right now. Are you gotta? I feel like, look, if you're in charge of the Tosh legacy, I feel like you gotta be working on a cannabis brand somewhere in the mix. So if that's the case, answer the other stuff first, then we can get to that too.
Of course. And so the foundation, the Peter Tosh Foundation, can be found online, petertosh.org. I mean, petertoshfoundation.org. And we have four other initiatives. As I mentioned, it's the Justice for Jawara, which really is about kind of sharing his story um, and educating people about kind of the effects of our criminal justice system and really pushing for criminal justice reform. We also have the Legalize It initiative, which is, we have a partnership with Minorities for Medical Marijuana and trying to make sure that the people within the legacy market, which I like to call it, you call it the traditional market, have access to this new booming industry. Unfortunately, right now, I think Black and Brown only make up, like 4% of the legal cannabis industry. So we can no longer continue to have this booming industry that we have arrested and incarcerated and even murdered people over for the plant. We have to make sure that we are looking to not only include them in the industry, but kind of right the wrong of the past. We also have a Can't Blame the Youth initiative, and that is about just connecting with young people. I've put together some lectures that I do in some different school settings, depending on the age group, where I touch on some of the concepts that my father sung about, not only with just cannabis legalization and it being a plant, but also equal rights and justice, African, which is really just about unity amongst people. And so taking his music and connecting with the younger generation, because like I said, that's how you create better minds for the future. And then we have the Peter Tosh Museum, which is an initiative. And so making sure we continue to have a place where the world can visit and learn about his legacy. So the museum opened in 2015, and it's in Kingston, Jamaica. It's right around the corner from the Bob Marley Museum, and it's definitely worth going to see. You can go and see his M16 guitar, which he had. Also his unicycle. He was known to ride his unicycle on stage. Lyric books, different artifacts that he's had from traveling the world. And so it's definitely worth going to visit. So those are pretty much what the foundation is all about, and we're definitely continuing to grow and expand it as well. But in my capacity as the head of the legacy and brand, I'm the youngest of 10. So yeah, you know, it just comes with the territory. And so we are definitely working on a cannabis brand, seen by Peter Tosh. We know that seen is actually a word in patois that my father would use, and it's common in patois, but it just pretty much, you would say it after like saying something, and it's almost just like saying, do you understand? It's offering, do you have an overstanding, as we say in Rastafari. So it's a deeper understanding of something, but then it has just its actual meaning, is that this whole industry that we are in today is something that my father has seen many years ago. So it's almost the prophesizing of kind of his vision, and the realization of his vision is what the brand plans to represent. But we want to make sure that we do that with integrity. This industry is
Full of mids.
is a mess in many ways, but there's a lot of great players starting to come out and try to do things the right way. And so we want to make sure that we're able to kind of do things the right way. 10% of proceeds from the brand will go back to the foundation, so that we can continue to do the work that he believed in.
Nice.
So we're still continuing to develop the brand and work on all of those logistical aspects of it.
Hey, any ways that I can help, please keep in touch. I'd love to help on all things Tosh.
Awesome.
I understand. So I've been around branding and marketing and streetwear, skate culture, all that stuff, and it's kind of right up my alley.
Awesome.
But I would think I would think it has to have like some Jamaican classics.
Yeah. No, definitely. We have to make it very authentic.
You got to find some of the peoples up in the bush. Mm-hmm. They've been growing forever. Get some of theirs together.
We need those Jamaican strains, most definitely. Yeah. So I mean, in my capacity, I'm also working on a major motion film, theatrical play, Netflix series, and so it's really always looking for new and creative ways to continue on his legacy, have his story be told to just new audiences, create new fans, because the music is timeless. His story is amazing.
It really is. I mean, it's sad the way that it ended, but it's great that it sounds like you and the rest of the family are continuing to bring great things upon, in his name, and for continuing to help those that he's not able to help now.
Exactly. He was the voice of the voiceless. So it's something that we definitely try to do with his name.
Good old step and razor.
Exactly.
Man, I'm super grateful that you took some time to come out and chop it up with me and share some of your story. Please make sure to get over any links to things that we talked about, so I can make sure to put them in the show notes, and hopefully some people will get active and maybe reach out and find some ways to get involved.
Definitely. I'll just reiterate, the nonprofit is petertoshfoundation.org. Then for just about anything Peter Tosh, you can do petertosh.com. And then we are on pretty much every social media platform, from Twitter to Facebook to Instagram. And that's just at Peter Tosh. So
are you working on some motion picture?
Yeah, we're
not like a documentary. We're talking like a film about, right? Like a biopic.
Yes, the goal is to really talk about the coming of the Legalize It album. It's the right time. So
Who's
Um,
who's gonna play Peter Tosh?
that's what I want to know. I think it's for me. It's really hard. I think that's going to be the most difficult task. But I guess if you get a really good actor, because he was 6'4", that's another thing is that he's super tall,
Yeah.
slim, and has this just presence that a really really good actor would have to kind of command. So
Yeah, that's why you got to get a good method actor to really
right.
step into the life of Peter Tosh.
Exactly. Yeah, so yeah, definitely thank you so much for allowing me to join you on your show and share our story, my family's story, and my family's legacy.
Yeah, and I'd love to link you up with a couple other people in the Northeast area. Some guys, and they're actually able to start doing some things again. I don't know if you've really spent any time in New York's legacy scene, but it was like a underground speakeasy kind of thing called Happy Monkey,
Yeah.
and
Glad.
oh, Vlad, I was going to say, if you're not already involved with them, I need to link you because, they are also friends of the Let's Talk About It podcast. I did an episode of their podcast, and I was actually trying to make it up there for 420, but just wasn't able to. And I mean, I think they're starting to get things grooving again. So I know they've done some good benefit dinners, like for Last Prisoner Project,
Okay.
and which is also a great cause, and along the same moral line.
Yes, they supported us with our Justice for Jawara initiative. I forgot to mention that. Steve D'Angelo is a super Tosh fan and super supportive of the legacy, and so they've been super awesome with kind of supporting us on that journey. And he's the one who introduced me to Vlad actually and Happy Monkey. And so I haven't met Vladimir personally. We've had a couple of conversations, and I was invited to the 420 event, and I was like, oh my goodness, this sounds amazing. But we were so busy because for us, it's International Peter Tosh Day, and for a lot of people across the world. So we were busy having some celebrations as well, but we'll have to probably collab next year because New York is definitely gonna evolve into just an amazing space, and I think that Vlad is doing some great work.
I'll tell you that's why I would go to New York. I mean, it was
exactly.
You're talking about a can of speakeasy for you to be able to come, hang out, chill, and it's right off Times Square.
Exactly. Oh, I didn't know it was right off Times Square.
Right off Times Square. I'm talking, you could walk 6 blocks and you're in Times Square.
Wow. Yeah, I'll definitely have to get down there and connect with them.
Yes. I'm reaching out to them today. They've shown me a lot of love, and and vice versa. We've had a lot of great interactions, and their people are always great. I would recommend anytime anyone is in New York, if you can figure out how to get to Happy Monkey, then get there. But no, that's great. It's I love how the Northeast is apparently such a small community.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the cannabis activists they bump into each other in some shape or form. I've spoken at a few different events, and you end up just making friends. Like, hey, how you doing? Because it's that same kind of close knit circle of people, on the front lines doing the work.
And have been for a long time.
Yes.
And it's great to finally have some voices really connecting and some players really getting after it and having some justice for people who deserve it.
Exactly.
And I mean, I know here in Baltimore, the racial divide in in Black arrests versus white arrests in Baltimore City is 94% of cannabis arrests are Black males. And it's just like they just want to pump people into the system.
Yeah. Yep, it's part of an economy. There's so many private companies that are, using prison labor. Unfortunately, slavery is not by far not over, and there's a
You got
lot
to
of
read that 13th Amendment closely
yeah,
because
exactly.
it abolishes slavery, except in the case of felonious men that are incarcerated in the prison system.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
it's
Wow.
crazy.
Wow.
It's literally written into our country's constitution.
I'll have to pull that up now that you mention it. I did not know that was
It,
um was in there.
I didn't either until somebody told me that, and I had to go look it up myself.
Yeah.
So we it's unfortunate that we still have a long way to go, but the good thing is that enough people sharing their story and being active and being vocal, and it can, that kind of shit can happen to anyone, whether you're just regular Joe
Yeah,
Schmo
you really
or,
can.
or the son of Peter, reggae legend Peter Tosh.
Exactly. Yeah, we're the prison capital of the world. We only have 5% of the world's population, but we house 25% of the world's prisoners. So there's something to be said about that. More than China, more than Russia, more than these huge countries, India. It's something has to change. So
Well, and it's crazy because like a lot of European prisons are like they'll let you out for stuff, and like if you are on good behavior, you can have like weeks at a time away from prison, and like you know here it's this insane thing, and like really to be thrown in prison you have to be committing like crazy
exactly.
violent crimes, or like you're burning churches, and here it's just like any reason they can get you into the system.
Exactly. Exactly. No,
So
it's so crazy. There's so many insane statistics around that, and so so much work to be done.
no, I really, like I said, I really appreciate it. I'm gonna it's 4:20,
I
so
was gonna say that.
I figure it's time for us to probably part ways and then enjoy and a decompressing of our and
Yes,
sacramental experience.
definitely. I would agree. Thank
Yeah.
you so much for having me.
Thank you, and Mr. B, I appreciate you. Bronner Communications. If you have a company that needs any communicating done, Bill Bronner's your guy.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you.
Like I said, thank you. Anyone and everybody, please go to the petertoshfoundation.org, petertosh.com. Find ways to support, get involved, give up some bread towards a good cause, and keep an eye out. Where are you on the internet? Are you personally on Instagram, Twitter?
Yes, 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 yes. I'm pretty. My name is pretty unique, so people just Google me and you find me very easily. There's not too many Niambe McIntosh, but I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I do a lot of the Peter Tosh lives on the Peter Tosh Facebook, and then my nieces do handles a lot of. She's the executive assistant of the brand Akata, K Tosh. She does the Instagram lives, and so we're very much accessible.
Nice, nice. And I definitely need the links to those lectures that you did breaking down dad's songs.
Oh yeah, of course, of course.
I'm super into that.
Of course.
But thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Friday, the rest of your weekend, and we will chat again soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Have a good one.